There's other like proposals out there that are similar for like bits, and also John Calvalho, he introduced a spec for making the base unit of account for Bitcoin just Bitcoin, like basically renaming the Satoshi to just a Bitcoin. And it would be so confusing. I hate it. I tried to knack it, but like they don't like that. They're like, you know, they're very remarkably inclusive. What BIPs actually get introduced and approved. It's kind of interesting. Like they even have a BIP like in the 50 range for like mining using optical computers. Yeah, and optical computers aren't really a thing that exists, but like there was like, I mean they do technically. There are people researching this, but you're not going to find an optical computer in like an electronic shop. You know, like you're not going to Amazon ordering like a device that contains an optical computer. I don't know of anything that uses that. And so now coming back to BIP360, this is like a new range they came up with specifically for quantum proposals. And mine was the first, and it's still going through review. It's still in draft. It is the most fleshed out as a result. It's the most mature. There are some others though that have been proposed, and there's some what they call pull requests. So there's like on GitHub, there's a website called GitHub where they keep all the code, right? And they have repositories for code and organizations. And there's actually a Bitcoin organization that has a repository called BIP. And in the BIPs, there are essentially only pull requests, no issues, just pull requests. I'm pretty sure they're only, they turn the issues part off. It's just funny, but you're not developer, you might find that funny. So only pull requests, and that means that you're basically making changes. So the way you make changes in open source, by the way, just so you know, is you take a repository and you fork it, and you're basically making a copy of it, and then you make your changes to your fork, your copy, and then you submit a pull request upstream. And so you commit your code, and then you submit your pull request, and then it goes through review, and you have to make changes, and then you have to splash the changes, and it can be pretty intensive. But yeah, that's what we're doing on the BIP, and mine's gotten over 300 comments so far.
So what's your proposal?
The proposal is called Pay2 Quantum Resistant Hash, and it's basically adding post-quantum cryptography to Bitcoin. So the idea is, you might have heard the FUD around quantum computers that like quantum computers could break Bitcoin. And the way you fix that, there's a couple different ways, but the proposal that I introduced is to add post-quantum cryptography, which is a new type of signature algorithm. So you might have heard of like ECDSA or cryptography. The idea is that you instead of encrypting secrets or protecting secrets, it's to make secrets capable of being stolen by through backdoors by advantaged actors. One of those advantaged actors might be the NSA, and this is actually appropriate to this discussion, by the way, because I've actually been asked, "Are you a spook?" And the reason why is because the cryptography that I'm proposing to introduce to Bitcoin is all NIST approved. And the thing to know about NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, is that they and the NSA are almost glued to the hip. And nothing that NIST approves doesn't also go through the NSA. Let's just be real about that. And so the thing is, that's one reason why I introduced 3 different algorithms. And one of those algorithms is designed and developed by a cryptographer named Daniel J. Bernstein. And DJB, or Daniel J. Bernstein, he was the guy who created the cryptography that's used in Signal and in Monero. And so it's an alternate crypto system to Satoshi's crypto that has gained a lot of adoption and is quite trusted amongst even cypherpunks. I mean, Monero is quite trustworthy amongst cypherpunks. And so...
So I have a question for you, Hunter. Do you feel that Monero's cryptographic algorithm is superior to Bitcoin's?
Well, so one thing is they only have 16 inputs to disintegrate from, whereas like many Bitcoin coin joins have more. Additionally, that said, that will change when they introduce full chain membership proofs, which will maybe come out later this year, even hopefully. I like Monero a lot. I find it to be very useful. But that said, it does not have superior monetary properties to Bitcoin. It
has more privacy.
It doesn't have better adoption either, really. And
what was that?
a lot of Monero holders rub me the wrong way, especially on X. They have a very disagreeable community. But still, I have to acknowledge that the technology has merit, because, as any good Bitcoiner should, because we should operate on a meritocracy, right? And in many ways, like these other networks are proving approaches that are alternative to Bitcoin, and we see them reflected in the market. And the market decides which is the best, right? And so, in many ways, we can kind of see them almost as a testnet for Bitcoin, or proving certain ideas to their furthest logical conclusion. One of my favorite test cases for like cryptocurrency alternative to Bitcoin is BSV, Bitcoin Satoshi's Vision, because they prove the furthest logical conclusion to what happens when you have unrestricted block size. When you allow blocks of a gigabyte or more, your network begins to break down, and they experience network failure, and as a result are essentially worthless. As far as I know, Bitcoin Satoshi's Vision is only capable of being transferred between exchanges by selling them for another currency pair. So in many ways, the exchanges are the ledger for BSV now.
Wow, it doesn't have its own ledger.
It's not reliable. The nodes don't sync. They don't stay in sync. They're always at different block heights. So the only reliable way to know that you have BSV or not is to sell an exchange. And by the way, you probably hold on the exchange too, because in order to deposit on an exchange, you need to wait like 10,000 blocks for it to be good, because they would experience reorgs that deep. It really is quite the terrible proposition, I should say, if I'm being polite here in Canada. There are definitely things to observe and appreciate. I don't count things. I like to evaluate things on the merit and not count something out entirely just because it's not Bitcoin. That said, even though I'm of that perspective, I have found that Bitcoin passes that test every time.
Yeah.
And that I would rather have Bitcoin than any other thing out there, including gold, including stocks, including this and that. I'm very much like, personally at least, in my own portfolio, only on Bitcoin. And even then, I lost most of it in a boating accident.
You lost what?
The boating accident.
A tragic boating accident. I lost
You had your Bitcoin.
Yeah, what cryptography does is it uses what's called the discrete log problem. And what this means, essentially, is that it's very difficult for classical computers to factor large numbers. And factoring basically means you find the numbers that go into the original equation. And so once multiple numbers are big numbers, very big numbers, are multiplied against each other, then they produce a new number that it's very difficult to know the original numbers after that. And that concept is called the discrete log problem. And unfortunately, one of the first things that was theorized to be accelerated by quantum computers, in terms of like they would have an advantage over classical computers, would be factoring large numbers. This is demonstrated in 1995, in the mid-90s, and at least not demonstrated physically, but theoretically. It was theorized. And then in the year 2000 or so, as elliptic curve cryptography was starting to rise, for example, the kind of cryptography that Bitcoin uses is only from the year 2000. The BIP360 document, the specification for elliptic curve cryptography used by Bitcoin, only first came out in 2000, and then supposed to use it 8 years later. What's nice about the algorithm that some of the algorithms that we're using in BIP360, they've actually been out longer than elliptic curve cryptography was originally with Bitcoin. So we get to benefit from lots of eyes on the algorithms and a lot of peer review and a lot of maturity. Still, there's still problems. They're not perfect. And the best algorithm I've found by far has been Sphinx, which is what J.M.J. Bernstein worked on. And I believe he's currently employed by Google.
He's where?
Google. He works at Google, yeah. In the cryptography. Yeah. He also made the library, software library, that is used by Google Chrome for cryptography. So it's called Libsodium, in case anybody's curious. And that was actually one place where I cut my teeth on cryptography for the first time, because it's very well documented. And it teaches you all about encryption, signatures, public keys, private keys, that kind of thing, how to handle them, how to zeroize them, that kind of stuff. And so, it's fascinating stuff. Yeah, it's fantastic photography. He was a little skeptical of SecP361. He has a library, a website called Save Curves, and he evaluates all the different curves out there. He says SecP is imperfect, which is the kind that Bitcoin uses, the kind of curves Bitcoin uses. He thinks it's imperfect, but it's good against most attacks. So,
sort of like how does that relate back to?
Just that there are different attacks out there that could be used to compromise cryptography at a basic level. Fortunately, what might be used to compromise SecP361 isn't in common use on Bitcoin. One thing I think you brought up earlier was elliptic curve Diffie-Hellman. Yeah, and Diffie-Hellman basically is a way to create a new key from two existing keys. And one reason you might do that is to establish an encrypted connection to somebody without first needing to share a secret beforehand. And that's also another term for public-private key cryptography.
Yeah.
And as a result,
We might be on the same plane. That'd be funny.
Yeah,
we need to introduce post-quantum cryptography to Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm working on. I'm working on BIP360. That makes any sense.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But this other thing that you haven't talked about,
You see all the people speaking there? JD Vance and stuff, and Sailor and everybody, all the YouTube guys that we know.
To some degree, I get it. I get why that might come to mind, and you might be really excited about it. But it's just an inappropriate thing to do, in my opinion. It's kind of rude. But that said, I am open to new ideas. It's just ideally they're not paired with this strange profit motive, you know? Records into a database that can be trusted in its execution, but not, you don't need to trust any single server. It's one of the most advanced and interesting distributed systems, actually, because it solves a problem that computer scientists thought was unsolvable. And that is called the Byzantine generals problem, and also known as Byzantine fault tolerance. And the way it solves that is by tying the ability to insert a record into the database.
You thought of it as an inefficient database. Maybe you didn't realize that it was solving that problem.
I understood that it solved that problem really well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I just thought it was an energy efficient database that had very limited capability.
The problem was it was trivial.
I saw the technical details. I was like, oh, that's really clever, but it's also really inefficient, and I wouldn't use it. I'll tell you two things. The first thing is there are two companies currently working on this problem, and they have been working on this problem of quantum computing for the past 20 years.
IBM, right?
No, I'm talking about Honeywell and Raytheon.
Okay.
Those are both defense
contractors.
Yes, and also there's another company called InQtel, and they're very interested in quantum. They publish. They're very public about all the things they invest in, and one of the things they invested in, they've invested in several quantum computing companies in the past. Now, and then what's also interesting is that they sold those investments as if they realized they thought they had peaked or something. But anyway, the second thing I also want to mention is that the government the federal government, U.S. federal government, is very concerned about this problem. There's a guy named Howard Lutnick. It's very sad, but it's a very sad story. But he's a great guy, in my opinion. But regardless, he was on an interview, and just unprompted, he brings up post-quantum cryptography, and as if he'd been briefed on it. And additionally, the government has a timeline where they say that they want no new technology to enter government service by the year 2030 that uses elliptic curve cryptography, and they need to sunset it entirely by 2035. Yes.
They want to replace it with quantum.
Post-quantum, yeah.
Quantum cryptography.
Yeah, they don't want to lift the curve anymore.
Yeah, they don't want it in a technology, and they've mandated that it needs to be completely gone by the.
So what is that, like some stretch goal? Like, okay, we got to figure this out. Like, what does that mean that they mandated it? It's like, what does that mean to them? What do we read into it? Like, isn't it a technology thing? Like, if I'm understanding correctly, we don't have those capabilities yet.
So
They don't exist in the market.
they're in the process of being adopted, and so for example, Signal has post-quantum cryptography in it.
Okay.
iMessage, browser technology. I think maybe 10% of requests now, 5 to 10% of requests are encrypted using post-quantum cryptography.
Oh, so it was out. Oh, so then we still don't know why they want that? Why? Because they have a backdoor entry to it?
Well, so I'm optimistic that there isn't a backdoor in this technology because the government is using it to secure its own secrets. And so I would imagine that people wouldn't want broken cryptography out there securing their own secrets. I think the days of cryptography are hopefully over. It would be devastating if there were a backdoor to any of this. And the thing is, there's a funny story about BIP360K1 because that is the elliptic curve that's used by Bitcoin, but it's not NIST approved. It's in fact its own thing that doesn't usually get included in security equipment or web browsers hazards, what they usually include is Sec P256R1. And Sec P256R1 uses what are called random constants. But the problem with random constants is that we're told they're random, but we have no way to prove that they're randomly chosen. Sam, I'm not a cryptographer, I'm just an applied cryptographer. I know how to apply cryptography, I know how to use it.
Yeah.
It's just like these tools are so almost black boxes.
So do you live in Canada? Where do you live?
Denver.
Oh, in Denver.
One of the, if you're ever curious about what that is, just go to BIP360.org. Also, if you're curious about like how quantum computing could affect Bitcoin, that's essentially the bit you want to read. And also, all I want to say is that once you read it, hopefully you'll want to make Bitcoin quantum resistant.
Awesome. Thanks, Hunter.